Hello, everyone, and welcome to Your Cup of Joy. I'm your host, Ariana Joy Christie, and I am so glad that you are here. This is a space to inspire, to learn, to grow, and to challenge. Get ready to fill your cup and spread a little joy along the way. Okay, Marissa Teeter, executive coach and business advisor, former senior wealth executive, community builder, podcast host, and my dear friend. Welcome back to Your Cup of Joy.
Thank you so much for having me back. I've never been a repeat guest on a show before, so I feel very special. So thank you for having me.
Of course. I feel like I could talk to you about a million things. So we might have to have you back again after this. But
No.
I reached out to you because I really want to talk about a hot topic that I feel like many people do not talk about and that you are an expert in, which is finances, money. All the
Money.
taboo words that people
Yes.
often think like, oh no, stay away. And like, I'm one of those people. I'm always like, ooh, if we're talking about money, get me out of here. Like, I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to talk about it.
And yet you will breastfeed on the internet, which makes me laugh.
Literally. Like, it's not that I'm scared. It just is like this weird thing that makes me feel
No,
uncomfortable. I don't know why.
I get it. I mean, I was just having this conversation a little while ago with someone who was like, we'll talk about politics now, we'll talk about religion, but people still don't talk about money openly with their friends and their family. Like, why is money and why are finances still considered such a taboo, private topic? It's very bizarre. I mean, you're definitely, you have a lot of company of people who just aren't comfortable having those conversations for whatever reasons. A lot of it comes from how we were raised and how
Mm.
money was talked about or not talked about most of the time in our families, and the assumptions that were made and the narratives that were created in the absence of these conversations. So it's pretty common for people to just not have a good relationship with money.
Yeah, it's so interesting to me because I'll often joke with my friends like, "Oh, I don't know anything about investing. I was never taught anything about investing, but like I could tell you like the periodic table of elements or like
You
the
could.
first 10 digits of pi." Like, why is that a thing that I know and retain and remember from school, but like nobody talks to me about money?
Well, we're all wired differently too, right? It's one of those things where we always lean into things that interest us, or we lean into things that we have to be interested in depending on, what life has presented us with. In a lot of relationships, like in, marriages, in business relationships, generally there's someone who's a little bit more inclined to know about money and manage the money, and it, not it's not uncommon in a lot of relationships for it to be men. I mean, we're
Mm,
seeing more and more women for sure get more involved in finances. Or when I say women aren't leading the finances, I don't mean they don't know what's going on. It's just they have 1,000 other things to do. So they're like, you know what, you can manage the finances, the garbage, whatever else you take care of. But I think it's a comfort level. Not everyone's wired that way, right? And
mhm,
until you hit a point in your life where you need to know these things when it matters, then people tend to learn about it. In this day and age, there's so much information out there.
so
Um,
much.
but it's tricky because people think about money as investing, but there's like 1,000 steps before investing as it relates to having a good relationship with money and having, financial well-being.
Mm. It's so interesting to me. And I mean, looking back on your life, what
Mm.
kind of drew you to finance and wealth management? Because being a woman in that field, like we talked about, is becoming more common than it
Mhm.
was, but I still don't think that it's huge. I don't think we see a lot of women in this space. And so, as one of those women in that space, how did you get there and what kind of keeps you passionate about wanting to talk about it?
Uh, If I'm being completely honest, it's not something I pursued. I got there by accident, right? It was
Yeah.
like, how did I even get here? Was probably the most realistic way to sum up my career. It was just a culmination of being attracted to different opportunities with different organizations and ending up with an organization that was in wealth management and just really liking the people and the culture and really what they were about. And it just happened to be wealth management. And then I
Mm,
kind of learned that part of it after being attracted to everything else that made the company what it is today. Whereas I think a lot of people maybe come at it differently, where they're just, I know I want to be an accountant, or I know I want to be a lawyer. And then they go find a company that maybe fits their values and their lifestyle, where I was just really attracted to this opportunity and then eventually learned the ropes. Yeah, I mean, I've always been obsessed with money, and I say that very carefully, but I just remember as a kid always looking for ways to make money. Like, what
Mm,
would you give me if I went and raked the leaves? What would you give me? Like, I'd always wanted to do sales. I was always purging stuff and trying to sell things. I mean, I started working as a babysitter, I think, when I was 12. I had my first part time job when I was 14. Like, I liked making money.
mhm.
I mean, of course, you know, the flip side of that is I also liked spending money, which I had to learn to control over time. um, but I think it was just this. I liked seeing the fruits of my labor. I liked working hard to make money, and um, but as I got older, I started to learn just the intricacies of money and became
Mm,
super interested in why do some people have money and some people don't. I grew up in a what I felt was like a very comfortable upbringing. I feel like I didn't want for much, but my parents didn't talk about money. Like even as a teenager or a grown woman, I'd go to the bank with my dad. He'd make me turn around as if I was going to rob him at the ATM. But that's how he was raised,
wow.
where he didn't talk about money with his father
Mm,
and his family. And so we didn't really talk about money. We almost acted like we didn't have money, like coupon clipping and, only this was back in the day when refills were not free. I don't know if people remember this time, but we'd go to restaurants and always ask if it was free refills because we know we were only getting one if it wasn't.
yeah.
We definitely weren't ordering appetizers. Like we lived very frugally. Again, didn't want for anything, but lived very frugally. And then I went to university, and I remember being around some of my who are now my dearest friends, and they came from a lot of money, and they bought raspberries out of season. And I was like, oh my God, that's insane. Like you're buying raspberries in November? Like, and because I was raised, you buy the fruits and vegetables that are in season. We grew a lot of our own fruits and vegetables. We froze
Yeah.
them. We froze them in, I don't know if you ever did this. We would wash out milk bags and like reuse them as Ziploc bags. Like,
No, what?
so that's how you saved money. You just washed milk bags. I'm dying to know if any of your listeners have ever done this because
I need
when
to
I moved
know.
out on my own, all I wanted to do was buy Ziploc bags. I was like,
Oh my
please let me
god.
just be able to afford Ziploc bags because I hated, like, even my school lunch would be like in a washed out milk bag that you
Get
cut
out.
open. Yeah. And you just use a little twist tie it up. Yeah.
Wow, I've
Uh,
not heard that, and I did a lot of very frugal things in my time,
so
so
it was just the way I was raised. And I think and then when I met these girls who were my age who looked at money differently, treated money differently. They came from a lot of money. I was exposed to a lot of wealthy people, the university that I went to, and I was just fascinated. Like, why do some people have money and some people don't? Where does it come from? How do
mm,
you how do you keep it? How do you make more of it? How do you, invest it? These were all things that started to become really interesting to me. So I always had an interest. And then I, somehow navigated my way to various wealth management roles. And the reason why I stay so passionate about it today is because money is not the be all and end all. It certainly isn't. But the amount of problems you can have in your life by not having a good relationship with money is scary, right?
yeah.
It can cause relationship problems. If something happens, I think in this country we think, all our healthcare is paid for. Well, the reality is there are a lot of treatments out there when you get sick with certain types of cancers or certain types of illnesses. There are things that aren't necessarily paid for. And so you need money. Or if you get sick and you take time off work, how are you going to pay your bills while you're not working? Or if you need to care for a loved one. So money started to become, I started to see that money was definitely something that gave people more options. And it's
Mm,
something that created sometimes less stress in people's lives when they had a better relationship with it. So for me, I just kind of went down the path of how can I better educate people on the value of having a better relationship with money, on understanding money and investing better. Like, how do we meet people where they are? And then, of
mhm,
course, when it comes to women, there are not a lot of women in this industry. There's not a lot of female advisors, financial advisors, stockbrokers portrayed in movies or, on TV. You just don't see a lot of them. And it's just not a career that a lot of people consider. And ironically, women are so well suited for this industry because it's all about relationships. It's all about managing your emotions and your emotional connection to money and being able to create plans to save it and spend it and invest it. So, a lot of the traditionally um, more specific characteristics that women have play very well to being a financial advisor. So I stay on the mission to try to attract more women to this business for sure.
I love that so much. It's really interesting when you're talking about going to the bank with your dad because I remember, wait, like, I don't know why for me, it's like, I remember thinking like, oh, how much someone asked me when I was in university or just finishing university, and I was looking for my career, like, how much money would you want to make to be happy? When I was thinking, like, what am I going to do with
Mm,
my life? And I was like, true, I don't know. Because when I was a kid, you couldn't ask somebody how much money they made.
no.
If you said that, like, you were in so much trouble. That was not information that was public, that was private, and you were not to have a conversation about it. So I just love that now it is a thing. Like, I listen to some podcasts that are all about money and transparency. And in the space that I'm in, a lot of people keep that private. But I think there's just so much to learn when we're sharing with each other and being more transparent in the money space. And so it's just funny to me that, yeah, like my mom too, never would I ask her, like, how much money do you make? But now being able to have those conversations with her is very cool. And
Yeah.
so I do think that it's inspiring and incredible that we can start talking about it. Um, but I'm interested to know in all of your experience in wealth management, in leadership, in your roles in the corporate world, what's maybe the biggest lesson that you've learned about women and money?
Well, you kind of touched on something just now that I thought was really interesting because I think women are worse at talking about money than men are. I
For
think there's
sure.
this fear of not knowing what we're talking about, or maybe being proud of how much money you make and then saying it out loud in a room and maybe realizing that you don't make as much as other people. Um, or when you're demanding more money in a job interview, not, I mean, use the word demanding, but when you're asking, there's always the idea of, well, you're a greedy bitch. I don't know. Can we swear on this
Yeah.
podcast? Like, I
Yes.
mean, I think we carry around baggage around saying numbers out loud. And
Mm,
this is exactly what I'm trying to focus on is that we need to talk more about these things. Like, how much money are you making? How much money are you spending on groceries every month?
yeah.
What is your car payment? What percentage of your income is your car payment or your mortgage? Or like, let's start getting the numbers out there so that we can see, okay, am I alone in this? Like, am I crazy? Am I spending too much money on groceries every month relative to how much money that I make? Or am I in a job where I'm making way less than I should? I mean, and it happens. Like, we can't trust that every organization out there is properly paying every single employee. And there is a lot of truth to speaking up and getting your worth, or, shopping around to see what the market rate is. But that only comes from talking to other people and seeing how much money they're making. And a great example is you mentioned it, the influencer space, right? There's maybe not a specific grid. It's not maybe formalized how much people get paid. It's really how much you're willing to negotiate. And certainly there are some metrics that play into it. But if a group of you and your influencer friends got together and said, hey, I got paid this, well, then it gives you the power to say, I know people are getting paid this much. And you go ask for more. It creates a
Mhm.
benchmark. Same thing in the speaking space that I'm in, right? Speakers, you go to events sometimes and there's people there that are getting paid, and there's people there that are just there volunteering their time who should be getting paid, but didn't speak up and ask to get paid. And I hate to say it, but a lot of times this is women. And don't get me wrong, if you want to volunteer your time for the exposure, or maybe you're doing some sort of trade for, video footage to support your portfolio. And again, this is a very specific example, but I think we need to talk about money more. And that is the biggest mistake that I see with women in finances, is that we just keep it very quiet, because I think some of us even know that maybe we could do a better job. So there's a little bit of shame around, I make pretty good money, but I feel like I don't have much to show for it. Or,
Mm,
my spouse still contributes to a lot of my spending because I spend more. Or I don't really know where my money goes every month, which is such a common thing. People are like, I don't know where my money goes. I just know that it's all gone at the end of the month, and I don't
yeah.
feel like I'm frivolous. But so it's having these conversations with the right people to really understand where you are at in terms of, just your situation. I preface this by saying, don't compare yourself to other people because that's also dangerous. But I do think we could be helping each other, um, better supporting each other as it relates to conversations around finances, income, and what we're spending and how we're spending.
Yeah, I love that. And it brings a couple of things to mind for me. I've been having a conversation with my sister lately. Um, and it just is so brings this to light for me. And she was saying to me, like, oh, what do I do when she was interviewing for jobs? And I was like, Micah, nobody is it gonna just say to you. And I mean, some companies will, but a lot of companies are not going to give you a raise just because they want to. Like, if
Right.
you don't ask, you will never know. And so I was trying to help her navigate like, just ask, what's the worst
Yeah.
thing that happens? Like, if a company doesn't have to pay you more and you're going to keep working more, maybe they just won't suggest it. But if you ask, maybe they would be willing and they would show you that you are valuable to them. And so I just think the message that I want to give people sometimes when we're talking about negotiating our rates or our salaries, depending on what type of job you're in, is if you don't ask, you'll never know. And for some people, some things are worth more than money. So like sometimes it's not the dollar amount, it's the time off or it's the
Yeah.
vacation time or it's the
Yeah.
flexibility. But all these things are things to talk about and think about when we're talking about money and negotiating. Um the
It's
other
fully acceptable to make these requests. And I
Totally.
wouldn't position them as ultimatums, like do this or
No.
else, but it's like, hey, this is really important to me. It would really help support me in my role and how I show up and my ability to perform at my best if, I was given, some flex time or some ability to work from home, which I know is a big one right now because I think a lot of companies are going the other way where they want everyone back in the office. And a lot of
Yeah.
people have really come to enjoy and find value in being at home.
Mhm.
But I think it's perfectly acceptable to say, I was, you know, just doing some research and really feel that this job merits, an increase and something in the range of X to Y. And it would really mean a lot to me if you would consider reevaluating my income range to see, if there's anything that could be done. And if you don't like their answer, then you have the right to do whatever you want with that information, but they're not going to fire you because you asked. And if they do fire you because you asked, you certainly have recourse because
Yeah.
you are allowed to ask. It's just a matter of how you position it and finding the right words to basically say, this is really important to me. And I think that I provide enough value to merit and warrant this request.
Yeah, and in having that conversation with her, I just said like, what's the worst thing that they say? No.
Exactly.
And like
Right.
then okay, am I still loving my job? Am I loving all the other benefits that come with it? Or am I going to look elsewhere? And those are both valid things to
Yep.
think about depending on the situation. The other thing that I love is I think when we share with our friends, especially or our network, it provides lots of opportunity for other people and it kind of gets our brains going and our thoughts
Mhm.
thinking. And I'm in a group chat that had nothing to do with work. It was just like for something that I went to, a social thing. And it was people from all different parts of life, new people that I hadn't met before, or people who I know. And in that group chat after the event, it kind of lit back up because somebody who was not in the influencer space but owns a business was offered an opportunity and she had no idea what a rate would be because it's not something that she typically does in her business. And so we were able to have a full conversation in there of
Mhm.
people sharing and giving their insights and their experience too. That really helped. And I just thought, like, this is so cool. This woman has not only like the emotional support of all of these other women, but also now gets to have insight into their experience in order to use it for her good. And it was just this beautiful thing. And now that project is done, and it was cool to see us all be able to come together. And I just think if we had more of that, I think it would be helpful in the money space.
Well, you raise a good point, as it relates to your sister and saying what's the worst that can happen. I
Yeah.
mean, let's just say you're in that group and the first person to speak up says you should charge 5,000 and you're one of the people who would typically charge 10. Well, first of all, your ego feels great because you're like, wow, I'm making more money than that person. But then if you throw it out and say, hey, actually, I think you could charge 10, then the people who make 5 are like, well, you mean that I could charge 10 now? So you're giving them an opportunity to double their rate. So, there
Yeah.
may be some initial sting or ick by being honest, but I always say this to people in your group of friends. I bet you know where they stand politically. I bet you know where they stand with their sex lives. I bet you know where they stand religiously. But do you know how much money they make? Do you know what their net
So
worth
interesting.
is? Do you know what their investing philosophies are? It's just the funniest thing that if we started talking about it more, and I'll tell you right now, people who are hoarding their best money secrets and investment secrets, you may be able to retire early, but it's going to be a very lonely retirement because all your friends are still going to be working. So you might as well help your friends get wealthy too, so that you have people to do stuff with. And I think, and one of the best pieces of advice I give people as it relates to their money situation is leveraging your community and your friendships. There's so many ways. Like we just talked about a way you can enhance your income by talking to people about your salary, about your rates, but you can also help figure out your expenses and your spending with people, right? Ask people, maybe the money they're spending on insurance is a fraction of what you're spending, or
True.
maybe you're like, hey guys, chicken's on sale at this store this week, or like come together or do more staycations together, do more, let's eat in. Like gone are the days of potlucks. Like bring back the potluck where we all get together at
Yes.
someone's house and we each provide a dish and it costs everybody $40 instead of $240 to go out for dinner. Oh, by the way, you have to factor in the cost of childcare, which
Mm,
that's another great way to help your friends save money through community is, hey, I'll watch your kids that next Friday. If you watch mine in 2 weeks when I have this thing, nobody has to pay for it. Like, I think
mhm,
we really need to lean into our communities to talk about money, but also to find other ways to help people save and make money based on the knowledge that we have and the experience that we have to bring others along with us. Because
mhm,
having money and being alone is a very lonely ride. But when all your friends have money, that's an awesome thing because you can all do fun
totally.
things together. So I always say, like, hoarding your best secrets is not a win for anybody.
Not helpful. I
No.
also really love that you talk about saving, not just making, because sometimes when we think about money, we just think, how can I make more?
Yeah.
But sometimes we do have to consider actually, how can I save more and make some little adjustments that might make big impact. Also, when you say like, oh, chicken's on sale, I always think of Jordan from Milk and Co. If you're from Guelph, shout out to Jordan.
Mm.
Milk and Co. has the best cookies ever, but she tells me all the time that anytime butter is on sale at
Oh, yeah.
Costco, she'll get like 20 texts like, yo, butter's on sale.
I have run
See?
into her at
Help a girl
Costco
out.
before, and I'm like, "Oh, that's a lot of butter." Like, this woman, well, she is a baker, she runs a cookie shop, but the amount of butter on her cart, and honestly, our family considers butter its own food group, so we are fully a butter family. But yeah, I
Totally.
thought that was funny. But I think about it this way. You mentioned saving. I think most people are not saving. And that is a
Mm,
big problem. The cost of living has gone up. The cost of everything has gone up. And I don't think people have changed the way they're spending. You either need to make more money to keep up, which is very hard to do. And we can talk about ways that potentially you can do that. We kind of already talked about a way in terms of asking for a raise but reality is it's either controlling your spending, controlling your expenses, but you still need to save, right? The metric that I love to use, and this is just a guideline, is the 50-30-20 rule.
okay.
So
50, 30.
50% of your money should be going to essentials. And let's clarify what essentials are. Essentials are your housing, your transportation, your utilities, and your food. Like basically we'll call them the bare
Basic needs.
necessities.
Yeah.
I would argue the type of transportation and what you're spending on your lease should maybe be reconsidered by some people. When I say food, there is always a way to save money on food in terms of how you're shopping, where you're shopping. But yeah, 50% of your after tax income, so your net pay, half of it should be going to live your life and the things you need to support yourself, put a roof over your head, and feed your family. The other 30%, which I feel is generous, is to your wants. And this is, living your best life, your kids' sports. Because again, kids' sports are not a necessity, people. Like, I don't know when that became part of the mortgage/kids' sports at the top of the list. Um, 30% of your expenses, your after tax income should be going towards just your wants. What's important to you? Is it lifestyle stuff, personal training, exercise, activities, travel. And then 20%, that's the magic number that you're putting away for your future self. That's
Mm,
the piece where, if you're familiar with the book The Wealthy Barber by David Chilton, which I
yeah.
recommend everybody reads, it's very old, but the basic principles are true. You have to put money away. You have to save to support your future self and whatever is potentially coming in the future. And so 20% of your after tax dollars should really go right away
Mm,
into some sort of savings account to be there for future you and whatever future you needs. And I think a lot of people right now, not only are they not putting 20% away, but I think that wants bucket is getting very, very big and it's hard to adjust. And again, I'm not going to go after Starbucks coffee because everyone goes after the coffee. Do you know how much a daily coffee at Starbucks could save you every year?
mm.
I'm going to keep
Mm,
your Starbucks, but you should be looking at everything else.
yeah.
And the best way to do that is through a budget. Most
Mm,
people don't have budgets, and arguably, many of the most wealthy people I've ever worked with as clients, colleagues, have budgets. They
mm.
know exactly where their money is going every month. They know exactly how much they have left to go towards splurge activities. Write it down. I'm like, do you have a budget? Do you write it down? No.
Our family does.
Yeah.
but my husband is in charge of that.
Yes. Well, here's another
I
thing.
should be
Both
more,
people should
yeah,
probably be engaged in this conversation
1000%.
because he may have different views than you on what's essential or how much you guys need to spend. And
Mm,
again, I find sometimes costs are divided up in families. Like one person
yeah.
generally does the Costco run or the
Mm,
groceries. And so they may have a number in that budget that doesn't actively reflect what you're actually spending every month now that costs have gone up or that your children's needs have changed. So maybe your diaper costs have gone way down, but your, you know, school snack costs have gone way up or sports costs have gone way up or activities because they're so the budget needs to reflect where you are in your life. And for people who are like, where do I start? What do I do? You can Google budgets.
mm,
And my recommendation would be to focus the first column on where are you at today? Go through your credit card statements. Generally, most credit card companies will have a summary statement, like an annual summary statement that divides it up for you, like meals and
huh,
entertainment, and it shows you where your money went. I think
amazing.
it's only done on an annual basis. Maybe some other companies have it on a monthly basis. I would say make the first column where you're at today. So don't be, no shame. We're just putting it all out there. Where is your money generally going today? And then where would you like it to go? Where do you think you can play around? What are some of the things you think you can change? And challenge yourself. Like my spouse and I, we love seeing who can save more money and make better choices and be the winner of the savings battle. Like,
Mhm.
who can, I remember one time I was selling a bunch of stuff on Facebook Marketplace, like kid stuff, the stuff that you get money for. And my husband's like, how did you make money this month? I'm like, I have secrets. I just have ways of making more money right? Because generally your income's fairly fixed for most people, but
Yeah.
it's it's such a basic thing, but we need to budget. We need to know, you need to know where your money is going. And
Mm,
when it's right there in front of you in black and white and you see that, let's say your essential costs are like 70%, then maybe you need to have a conversation. Like, should we be leasing cheaper cars? Do we only need one car? Could we make it with one car? Could we change, other things and other costs? Could we changing how we grocery shop, where we grocery shop? Could we play around with those numbers? But I think until they're in front of you, it's really hard to change because the next thing you'll want to talk about is investing. Well, if you have no money saved, then you have no money to invest. Like
yeah.
people always want to ask me about stock tips and investments. And I'm like, but you have no money. Like you need to have a good chunk of money put away
Mm,
to be able to access some of the best investment opportunities out there. So, first and foremost, you need to save money to create a nice little nest egg to then give yourself the opportunity to put that into something that will matter for
hmm. I love that. And those are very good take home
you.
things. I think sometimes when you're thinking about a budget, sometimes it's like, oh, where do I start? So I love that idea of Googling it. And I also think that nowadays we have so many tools at the tips of our fingers that are
Mm.
free. Like
Yeah.
ask chat. I'm always like, why do I not ask chat GPT?
Ask
Chat will
chat,
probably
put your
create
budget into
a budget
chat
for
and
yeah.
ask it how you could save some money,
Yes. So I
right?
really, really love that. And I think then being able to actually see the numbers really puts things into perspective. I'm also a very like goal oriented person. So
Mm.
sometimes um when I was trying to have less Starbucks in my like mat leave days when I was really drinking lattes, that was like what gave me life back in the day. Now I just drink black coffee. I don't know why, but back then
Sure.
I like so badly wanted a latte and I was like, "Oh, if I'm doing this so often, like that's a lot of money. It's like $7 each time. It's crazy." So then I started being like, "Okay, I'm going to make lattes at home, but if I do X, Y, and Z, then I'll reward myself with a latte." So then it limits the amount of times you're doing
Mhm.
it. It increases your productivity in other things, whether they're money making opportunities or just life goals that you have. But I just felt that if I cut things out, but then rewarded myself with those things, I was having less of them. I was more excited for them. And it helped me become a little more productive.
Yeah, and there's always these little like games you can play with stuff like that. So for
Mhm.
example, if you load money onto the Starbucks app, and I'm going to try not to butcher this. I think you get double the points when you use the
I think
app.
you do too. Yeah.
So load a certain amount of money for the month. When it's gone, it's gone. That's how you stay on budget.
Mm.
You've now earned double the points because it was on the app. And then you'll probably earn a freebie by the time the month is done, right? So it's like, and even people looking at their credit cards, some people use terrible credit cards. Like, again, have a nice little
Mhm.
conversation with Chat GPT about your credit card, why you have that one, and see if there's something comparable or better. These are tiny little things you can do, and I joked about coupon clipping earlier, but There are things you can do where you say, okay, I only buy certain things when they're on sale. So I only buy steaks and chicken when they're on sale. For the record, they go on sale somewhere every week. So it's not like you're going to have to wait weeks to get your fill of meat, but you can start to create little rules for yourself. One of my favorite rules that I've used, and I know I've gotten a lot of friends and clients to use, this idea of spend money every other day.
Mm.
So can you not spend money every other day? And I mean, if you ran out of milk and you need milk, guess what? You're not getting it till the next day. Can you, or you have to be more organized to have done it the day before? Can you not spend? Because it's so funny. Like these days, you can just tap, 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 tap.
It's so
Right?
easy.
Like you don't even have to think about it. My daughter made a comment yesterday because she's at the age where she's quite obsessed with Starbucks and with Ariana. They're her two favorite things.
I love
Um,
her.
and she made a comment about how she's saving her stars on her Starbucks app so that in case she's doesn't have money on her one time. And I started to laugh because I'm like, well, adults always have money on them. This is the problem. Like it's on your phone now. You don't even have to remember your wallet. You could have money on your phone. So we're never in a situation where we don't have money, which makes it just so easy to tap and not realize that we've spent money. So I challenge people to not spend money every other day, because then that's maybe you won't eat out lunch that specific day, or you won't grab your coffee that day, or you'll wait to get groceries the next day, or go, maybe I don't really need that thing today. So these are just little things that you can do to minimize spending, because it's harder to make money than it is to save money.
Mm-hmm. I love that so much, actually. What is maybe a first step for anybody who's feeling like so overwhelmed? They're like, okay, I need to do something, but I have no idea where to start. Because oftentimes that's me.
I think put it all on paper,
Mm.
right? And this is a great exercise to do with your partner. Put it all on paper, right? Let's focus on, like, let's create, where is our money going? What kind of money do we have? What do we have saved? What are our debts? Like, just put it on paper and create your own kind of budget, spending tracker, and a little bit of your own balance sheet, right? What are our
Mhm.
assets? What do we own? And what are our debts? What do we owe? And just put it there in front of you so that, number one, you're empowered now because you're in the know. You can see exactly where you stand, and that you can see firsthand that when you make changes to your spending and you're able to put money away, it directly impacts your assets and helps you pay down your debt, which puts you in a greater position of freedom and more options for the future. So I think putting it on paper and going through that exercise with your partner is really important. I also think it's important to be aligned with your partner in terms of where you are at with your relationship with money, right? And so I say that because, when you asked yourself how much money you need to be happy for the rest of your life, you and your partner could have very different answers. And I'd be curious to understand what that number is and why.
Yeah.
Or if you guys won the lottery tomorrow, if $10 million landed on your lap, it's really interesting to see what each of you would do with that. Like, people
Mm.
just have different views of the role money plays in their lives and how they see it and what they want to do with it. So I think a lot of this starts there. And then I would say, do this exercise with your friends. Have
Mm.
a girls' night, host a girls' night where you're like, listen, we are going to put this all out. We're going to have some conversations. We're going to teach each other. We're going to learn from each other. We're going to challenge each other. Let's see if we can all put away X amount of dollars this month. Now, it doesn't have to be the same amount because you might all make different money, but can we all put away the same percentage? Or can we all agree that for the next couple of months, we're not going out, or we're going to stay in, we're going to do like a rotating potluck or night, or like appetizer night or something. Really just find things that don't feel life sucking, that feel like they're empowering and they're also fun. And you just happen to be, you know, gaining control of your finances and also feeling empowered at the same time. I also mentioned the David Chilton book, The Wealthy Barber.
Mhm.
It's a very old book, but I think there's a lot of fundamental teachings in there that remain true that people should understand. And then the last piece is, there are a lot of great financial advisors out there. There's a lot of crappy ones. So I highly recommend you ask around. This is a great question to ask your friends and family. I recommend that you meet with a few of them
Mm.
to see if there's a fit. And these advisors should be talking to you about aligning your strategies with your goals. They should be talking to you about more than just investments and returns. Like, to me, that's the final piece. Like, here's the best analogy. When you go order a cake, you talk to the baker about the look of the cake, the flavor, how big you need it to be based on people. You don't talk to them about the ingredients. You're like, where did you get your flour? How long do you mix the eggs for? Like,
Yeah.
we don't get into the specifics of how the outcomes are created.
Mm.
The financial advisor will figure out the specifics of how the outcomes are created, as long as you can determine what your goals are and the role that you play in supporting savings to be able to invest in terms of paying down debt or whatever that looks like. This is really more an exercise of aligning goals and making sure that you're feeling empowered and educated. You also want an advisor who's teaching you stuff, not someone who's gatekeeping all the information. So you have to call them and you're afraid to ask questions and you don't really understand what they're doing. And it's like wizardry. You want someone who's going to really empower and educate you. And that's really important too. So you should be talking to 3 or 4 advisors to make sure you find the right one. I know you said one thing and I just gave you 5, but
I love that. But
careful.
I think this is a really good tip too. Like, oftentimes, I mean, I come from real estate, so I tell people this when choosing a realtor, but I love that it's also applicable to a financial advisor
Mm,
because so my first like incidents with a financial advisor, I was in university, I went to the bank, I submitted my tips because I worked at the keg
yep.
and I was like putting my cash in the bank and I had a savings account and the lady at the bank was like, "Oh, you have this amount of I think it was like $15,000 or something in this account. Like, are you doing something with that?" And I was like, "I don't know. Saving? Like somebody once told me to save. I think I was scared to not have anything." Um she's like, "Well, have you ever thought of investing?" And I was like, "I honestly really don't know what that means. Like I
Mm,
just work and then I put money in the bank and then I
yep.
go to
As
school."
do most people. Yep.
Yeah, and she was like, "Well, I think you should talk to somebody about that." I was like, "Okay." So she set up a meeting with me. I met with that person. I went in at the time that the person in the uniform told me to go and meet them. I went and had the meeting. They told me do X, Y, and Z. I said, "Okay." And then years later, I looked at this little thing and was like, "Oh, I've lost money." Like
Mm,
I can't be losing like how? If I had that much money, like I think I maybe broke even, but by the time I paid fees or whatever, I had not made any money after X amount of years. And
yeah.
okay, $15,000 is not that much money, but at that point in time, that was
It was a lot.
a
Yes.
lot for me. And I just thought like, could that have been a different outcome? Like I'm not sure what happened here. And I didn't ask questions because I didn't know what questions to ask. I just had no information. And I didn't understand that you could have any financial advisor and you were allowed to ask those questions. I just sat down with the person that the lady told me to sit down
Right.
with and signed to the paper. And so I just really like that. Like, that's such a tangible and important piece is that you can meet with as many people as you want.
Yeah.
You can see who feels comfortable for you. You can see who is aligned with your values or the things that make you feel good in the state of your financial situation. And that is actually very important to do.
Yeah. And like I said earlier, there's so many ways to self empower yourself. So you could self educate. And again, you're like, okay, I don't want to learn. I don't want to listen to podcasts about money, Marissa. I don't want to read a book about money. I get it. Just flip it open every once in a while and read a few chapters or like a couple of sentences and then close it up and or talk
Mhm.
to friends. This is a great opportunity. If you see someone who you think is doing fairly well with money and or someone in the industry that you know, like I think we all know someone in the industry, have a conversation with them and then use that as a starting point and then go validate it with someone else. And also like everything that I recommended doing where you put everything on paper with your spouse and you have these conversations, you need to have a certain awareness or baseline understanding of where you're at before you go into a room with an advisor because you don't want to hear it from them for the first time, right? You
Yeah.
want to know where you stand and have a clear understanding of what matters so that they can help you build a plan around what matters to you, not what matters to them. That is really
Totally.
critical. And I would also say, you know, again, people get really caught up in the investing piece of this when they're carrying tons of debt. They're barely scraping by every month. They have no savings. Like, first and foremost, you need to get in the black, right? You need to manage your debt. So, hopefully people aren't carrying credit card debt every month. If you are, do you have a credit line that is less interest rate, charging less interest than your visa that you could use to pay it off? Like, always use the highest, pay off the highest interest with the lowest wherever possible. And again, I don't want to give financial advice, but because it's so specific to the people, which is why you need someone you to self-educate. But
Yeah.
I think you need to manage your debt and have good savings before you even think about investing.
Yeah.
And even when you go to invest, you need to have a really strong sense of what matters to you because, yeah, if you're invested in the stock market, it will fluctuate. And you're going to have a certain comfort level with that. If not, there are all alternatives. There are investments that are not in the stock market that you can look at. But you need to have a good relationship with your money and know what matters to you to make sure your investment goals are aligned with your life goals and not the other way around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's just such good, tangible advice too. And a good place for people to start when it feels like maybe an icky subject to you or something that's like stress inducing. If you could go back and tell your 20-year-old self one piece of financial advice, what would it be?
Just
I
stop
know it's a
spending
very
money.
hard question.
Stop spend. Like
Mm.
I think I just, and there is truth to this. Like it was like, well, I'll just make more money. So I think I just spent, even though I guess I budgeted, but I probably could have tightened up, right? It was like I knew
Mm.
what I was spending most of the time. Although there's this funny story when I first got married. I would always say, I don't know where my money went. Like I was making good money, and then so I sat down, I did a budget again because it had been a while. So I sat down, I did a budget, and I just realized, I would go into Shoppers Drug Mart for toothpaste and I would come out with $200 worth of cosmetics. And
I think that happens to a lot of people.
yes. And so it was so funny because I literally, and I hate picking on Shoppers Drug Mart, but mentally in my mind, I was like, well, if I never go there again, I will never do that. And so now I seldom go to Shoppers Drug Mart because in my mind, it's become this place that I just like, who knows where my money goes? I just start throwing it into the wind. I don't know. But to me, and again, it was, I also noticed that I was spending money on eating out a lot. So I tightened that up. And again, it was just something for me, it was something that I think just being aware that I could have started saving more sooner and I could have tightened things up. But on the flip side, I probably would have spent more money on experiences. I probably would have traveled more and done all that. But I think the best piece of advice though is really budgeting and just having some form of savings. And this is the most basic advice that everyone should be listening to is don't spend more money than you make. Like and it seems so basic. And there is a Saturday Night Live episode that is so old. There's a skit from years ago where people are like, what do you mean don't spend more money than we make? What about my credit card? And like it's this whole thing that goes on and on. But that is the problem that most people find themselves in these days is that we spend more money than we make. And I think if people could just try to find ways to live within that most of the time, then people will be okay and be able to, be resilient to whatever's coming. But yeah, I think past Marissa could have tightened it up a little bit more.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we probably all can. Um, I think sometimes that we tear down this like next generation of people in our world.
Mm.
I'm guilty of it all the time, especially when it comes to my sister being like, "Oh, you and your friends, blah blah blah." We love to do that. When I was young, whatever. But I think that sometimes we underestimate the power that they hold and the things
Mm.
that they're doing and learning and just becoming so much more empowered. And there's so much information out there. So, how do you see this next generation of women maybe changing the conversation around money and changing their presence in this space?
I think the sky is the limit. I really do. I think there's just so much information at their disposal now to be able to understand money so they can self-educate, they can self-empower. The curriculum in schools is leaning a little bit more towards financial literacy, so that's helpful. And I also think there's just so many more tools out there to be able to, like, I watch my daughter. So she'll look at the price of something in the store and then look at it online and
Oh,
learn that if I buy it online, I save 15%. Or, if I wait for this sale to happen or if I get points. So like she already has this mind of trying to figure out how to get the deal. I mean, when we were kids, we would just go to the store and buy the thing. It wasn't, I mean, when I was young, maybe when you were younger, there was no such thing as online shopping
yeah.
for this old lady. But um, I just think I see my daughter, and I am the oldest of a lot of cousins, and my young cousins learning how to stretch a dollar. Um, and I think also there's a real opportunity for this generation to do and be whatever they want to be, and hopefully
Hmm.
see more female entrepreneurs, more opportunities to start businesses, run businesses, you know, so that just the earning potential is immense, and there's a massive wealth transfer happening over the next few years. By 2028 in this country, women are expected to control more than half the wealth, so about $4 trillion in this country. And women are coming by it through, yes, through inheritance and through divorce, but by earning more money, making more money, selling businesses, starting businesses. And so by women controlling the wealth in this country and in others, there's going to be a shift in terms of opportunities for wealth transfer, for intergenerational wealth strategies and inheritances, but also how that money can be used for good. And I also love what I'm seeing in terms of the generosity of women reinvesting in their communities when they do have money. So I think, I think the opportunities are endless, and there's just a general, I guess, a sense among that generation that anything's kind of possible, which is
Yeah,
amazing.
definitely. I love that. And you touched on your daughter a little bit, and
Mhm.
I just want to touch a little bit on having these conversations with our kids. So, how and maybe can they, but also how should mothers or maybe parents in general model healthier money conversations with kids instead of turn around, don't look at my bank
Yeah.
account?
Cover your eyes, don't rob me.
Yeah.
Um, I think that expression, kids seem to absorb what's caught, not taught, which is they're watching you,
Mm,
right? Kids are watching. They are going to learn more from seeing what you're doing with your money and how your relationship with money is, more than you could ever sit there and say, save your money,
mhm.
right? Do this. They're watching you, right? If you're telling them Starbucks is a waste of money, et cetera, and you're, chugging back 2 Starbucks a day, it's, and there's some people who are fine with that style of parenting, like do as I say, not as I do. That does not jive with my 12-year-old daughter. I'll tell you that right now. She's
Yeah.
not buying into doing as I say and not as I do. So they're watching. So I think modeling the behavior is really critical. They need to see
Mm,
you saving money or making efforts to be mindful around money or looking for savings or not being, you know, irresponsible, whatever that looks like, right? Kids are going to pick up on that. They're also watching, are you having stressful conversations with your spouse about money? Are
mm,
you freaking out when the visa bill comes in? Are you, like those types of things? Are you having to sit there and negotiate what we can and cannot afford this month in front of your children? So I say all those things to say these happen for sure in real life, but we maybe need to be mindful about what our children are being exposed to. And then when it comes to the actual language, I think it's really helpful to teach, to set up bank accounts and to get kids excited about putting money in the bank, but
mm,
also, creating parameters around what you save, what you spend. And in my family, it's also what you donate. So some families do jars, others just do kind of amounts. So some goes in the bank and then they have a jar for what they want to spend and then a jar for what they donate. Um, yeah, it's exposing them to it. And wherever you can help your kids, sorry, make money. So through bake sales or lemonade sales or things like that, there's something about them earning it. And again, this is as they get a little bit older, where they
mm,
start to see the value in it, right? So through allowances or things like that, kids start to create a connection with money. Oh, I had to put in this type of work to get this type of money, and they create a different relationship with money and understanding the effort that goes into making it and keeping it. So hopefully it gets them thinking twice about spending it. So yeah,
I
I
love
think it starts with you and making sure you have a strong relationship with money, and that the kids are picking up on that.
That's incredible. And I want to touch just quickly on philanthropy too, because you did just touch
Yeah,
on that a little bit. But what role does generosity and philanthropy play in financial well being?
I think, if it were up to me, there'd be a sliver as part of that 50-30-20 that would go to giving back. Um, and everyone has to kind of pick that number. Some businesses allocate a certain percentage of their wealth or their income, their profits, their revenues, whatever the metric that they use.
Yeah.
I think everyone should have their own personal metric that matters to them. And if you're in a season of life where maybe you can't give dollars, maybe you give hours,
Mm,
because your hours are valuable too. And so that matters and has an impact, certainly. So I think you need to figure out where you're at and what you're able to give. And I think it's a wonderful thing personally. And I know you're probably the same way. I feel we all have a certain responsibility to give back to the communities in which we live. I mean, our communities are only as strong as the people in it. So being able to help your neighbor or give back to the systems that are providing support for the people who need it, I think matters. And I always tell people, don't underestimate the impact that it has on you when you get to go do some good.
mm,
And, at a part of that wealth transfer that I mentioned earlier, there is a significant anticipation that a lot of that money will get reinvested into communities because it will be in the hands of women.
mm.
And so that's exciting to think that that there's big plans for all that wealth that women are going to inherit to do good for multi-generations, but also for communities. So yeah, I would say carve off a percentage, be it dollars or time, to give back. I think it will
Or a
impact you
mix
in
of
ways.
both, because
Yes.
I love when you can see the impact that you're doing with the money that you're donating, but then you also get your hands dirty. I just think there's so
Yes.
much to be said for that.
Yeah.
Okay, Marissa, you know, because you've been a guest on the podcast before, that I usually end with rapid fire, but today I created a new kind of type of rapid fire for this topic, and it's splurge or save.
Oh gosh. Okay.
Daily latte or coffee shop runs.
Save.
Knew it. Travel upgrades.
Save.
Professional coaching or courses.
Splurge.
Skincare,
Investing in
beauty.
yourself. Ooh, some save, some splurge.
Okay, depending.
Depending, yeah.
Tech or gadgets.
I'm generally a save, but yeah, probably a save.
Yeah, I am too. Home decor or furniture.
Oh my God, save. Stay away from
Home Sense.
Home Sense, ladies.
Kids activities.
I think there's a time to save and a time to splurge. I think it depends if it fits within your budget. Yeah.
Fitness memberships.
I think there's a way to save on those, but it's such an important part. Like, I would much rather people give out their daily lattes and spend it on a gym membership, in my personal opinion.
And lastly, jewelry.
Oh God, save. Honestly, I get so many compliments on my earrings sometimes, and I always joke they're from Giuseppe Fresco, which is a fancy way of saying Joe Fresh.
Joe Fresh.
Like, they're from Giuseppe Fresco, the Italian jeweler. No, I'm just kidding. It's Joe Fresh. Yeah, I've never, but that's just again, I never want people to not spend money on things that matter to them, because then if you said to me a nice bottle of wine, I would say save, because I'm not a big drinker. But if that matters to you, then just find a way to make it work, right? Yeah. If jewelry matters to you, find a way to make it work. And that's when it's all written down on paper, you will find a way to take from one to get, like, if you don't want to eat, if you don't need groceries and you want to go buy jewelry, that's totally your decision. So you got to just find a way to make it work. Yes.
Oh, I love that. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for all of your expertise. Where can people find you, connect with you, work with you?
You can find me on my website, marissateeter.com. You can find me on Instagram, marissa.m.teeter. I also have a podcast called Teeter Talks, which Ariane has been a guest on, where we talk, I just speak with amazing people about their journeys and what they have to offer. And we all try to pull some nuggets and learning out of it. But yeah, I love interacting with people. I love hearing from people. So don't ever hesitate to reach out.
Yay. Thank you so much.
Thanks, friend.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Your Cup of Joy. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation as much as I did. And if this episode resonated with you, or if you've been loving this show, I'd really appreciate it if you could take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you are listening. Your support helps the podcast grow, it helps it reach more people, and it means the absolute world to me. So keep filling your cup with joy, and I will see you next week.